Everyone's making choices. Okay. All right. So let's see. Okay. So just gonna put something in the chat here. Yeah, I did. Thank you. Mm, okay. Okay. So let's begin. Can you hear me okay, Betty? You want to go closer? There you go. Okay. Great. Perfecto. This is going to be hard for me, having such a split to kind of see everybody. At least move over that way. If you want to stay in the back, that's okay, but just move over a little bit that way. Thanks. Sorry about that. Thank you. That's great. Thanks. Perfect. Can you hear me now? Excellent. I understand I have hearing issues as well, so I get it. And if I get too quiet, just make a sign and I'll speak up more. All right, so let's begin. Okay. So we want to start by just settling in, kind of getting the mind and body in the same place into the present moment. Consanta Sangarab Shri San Pamakarajiban Mishuna, so son of Nantatin Gatsaso, Gachana Manamla, so what that Omi Chikin Kipodane, to some Sangai Kunging Owene, and Sam Shakana Suntu Sepa, so in a Meshapla, so what. All right, so we want to start with our bodhicitta motivation. Bodhicitta being the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So bodhicitta begins with compassion when we consider the suffering of others. And out of that compassion, when it's mixed with the wisdom that understands the cause of suffering being fundamental ignorance, we want to remove that cause, otherwise the suffering never ends. So we remove that cause by becoming enlightened or discovering our enlightened nature. So out of great compassion for all beings, we have that bodhicitta motivation as the reason for us being together this morning. At the very least, if we could think, may the time we spend learning and practicing today benefit not only ourselves, but others as well. Okay, so hey, Melina, hey, hi, Tess and Lucy. Some okay, so somebody has a question, and what is your question, please? Okay, can you hang 1 second? Would you mind just Did you guys hear that? Okay. Oops, should have been clear. Um, in brief, the question is about self-compassion and perfectionism, and like where do you draw the line and how do you prevent from self disparaging oneself. So I think it's a very good question and a very helpful question because it is something a lot of us suffer from, especially in the West, I think, because we have this kind of harsh mentality in the West of a sort of oh, they couldn't hear you after all that. I'm surprised. Where's it coming from? I don't understand how these things work. Anyway, can you hear me though? You can hear me, right? Yes. Oh, let's see. No, it's okay. Um, she said thanks for reporting the question, for repeating the question. Um, so earlier, okay, good. Thanks, Jess. Right. So then Melina's adding to that question. Another aspect is how do you recognize your limits? Okay, good, good, good. Give me a second. While still aspiring to go further. So I think the root of this question is actually self-compassion, right? So you know, in the Vajrayana Buddhism, we focus a lot on compassion for others, like bodhicitta, right, and compassion in general. And so one can easily think that it, or get the impression that it doesn't include yourself, all right? But it definitely does include yourself. There's something called the twofold goal, right? And the twofold goal is enlightenment for oneself and others. So it does include yourself. The other thing that, as I was saying, for Westerners, there's a kind of no pain, no gain kind of mentality, which, we can find a bit difficult to overcome. And then there can be added to that this sort of Judeo-Christian uh, attitudes, right, of guilt and blame and, sin and all this kind of heavy stuff. So, um, one, it's like five different things coming in my head at the same time. Thanks, ADHD, you're the best. So, um, um, right. So skillful means, okay. So there's this duo in Buddhism that we call skillful means and wisdom, right? Skillful means and wisdom. So skillful means wisdom is clear. It's wisdom. Skillful means so anything that we do, whether it's formal practice, informal practice, various kind of tricks and hacks and teachings. I mean, it includes a lot of things. Okay, so um, if we're talking about compassion for ourselves because of our culture and the other things that I mentioned, or sometimes or our own sort of individual makeup, right, in the way we were raised or something, we can feel that uh, I'm sorry, I keep losing my train of thought, that compassion is something that to have compassion for ourselves is like indulging, it's like self-indulgence, right? But it is not, it is skillful means, okay? Because if we don't have compassion for ourselves, we are not going to be able to have as much compassion for others, okay? We have to understand that at like the goal is to have a heart that is 100% compassionate, right? so that there is nothing but compassion and love and, positive qualities there in our mind heart, right? So chitta, you might remember from previous sessions, means the word chitta means mind and heart, like together. Okay. So if we're trying to develop 100% compassionate heart, but we're sort of reserving, like we have like 95%, dedicated to compassion for others, but like we're reserving this 5% for hatred for ourselves. That is not 100%, right? And if we actually practice this, like through Tonglen, which we'll do today, then because of this topic, if we actually practice compassion towards ourselves, we might be surprised by how much easier it is to have compassion for others. And this is just my thought. This part is not in the teachings, but it's just my experience. And what I think is what's happening there is because we tend to be harder on ourselves than we are on anybody else. So if we overcome that particular difficulty, then it's just the rest is easy, right? And so then another aspect is like the more we practice, the more we study, meditate, all this stuff, then the more we sort of become familiar with what's happening in our mind and kind of how our whole system works, right? And the more we know about what's happening in our own mind, the more we know or how we function, let's say that, then the more we understand how others function too. Okay. I'm not saying we're all the same or like there's just one mind or anything like that. But, anger is anger. Everybody knows what anger is. We might get angry for different reasons. We might have more or less frequency of angry episodes. This kind of thing can differ, but the emotion itself, we know. Yeah. So if, like I always talk about this when we speak on anger, so if I see myself, if I start to really pay attention to how much suffering there is in me being angry, then I can have compassion for others who are angry because I know that pain. Okay. So having compassion for ourselves, giving ourselves a break, so to speak, the benefit of the doubt, this kind of thing, right? Being gentle with ourselves is really helpful, and it's skillful means because in this way we can have more compassion for others, and we can continue on the path, right? If we're constantly beating ourselves up, we're not going to want to practice anymore. We're not going to want to think about this anymore. You know, we're just going to be like, I don't want to practice because I know I'm the worst. And I'm just going to, what's the point? Somebody like me, you know what I mean? Right? This is not helpful. It's not helpful. So, we can think like, oh, this is indulging. I want to say like indulgement, but that's not a word. Indulgence, self-indulgence. Thank you. Um, so we can think that, it's self-indulgence, but it's not. It's skillful. Like if we want to benefit others, if we want to have compassion for others, if we want to progress on the path to enlightenment for others, we have to have compassion for ourselves, right? So that is not to be confused, and this is where the other parts of this question come in. That is not to be confused with, oh, I can just sit around and eat bonbons all day because that's what I want to do. And I'm going to be nice to myself and just watch TV, like it's not really the same thing. Okay. So at the same time that we want to be compassionate, we have to be honest with ourselves. And that might take a little time, we have to be honest with ourselves about a variety of things. Like, are we, is this so? Melina asked about limitations, right? So, is this really my limit? Or is it just I'm feeling kind of lazy? That's we can ask. And that could be trial and error. We can think, no, it's really my limit. And then later realize, like, no, I probably, or we can think, no, I'm not at the limit, and I'm just going to keep going. And then we sort of just feel like wrung out, and then we realize, no, that was actually my limit, right? So we're the only ones who can do that. Like nobody can do that for us. And unfortunately, in this whole freaking path, there's like not, it's so frustrating. There's never like a one size fits all answer, you know? And so it's always like a case by case basis. And also, there's never somebody outside of yourself. I mean, sometimes the teacher can, or the guru, the lama can fulfill that function, right? But normally, there's not somebody outside of ourselves that's going to tell you, you know, like, oh, this is BS, you know, or no, this is your limit. Like, we're the ones who have to do it, right? Um, Class on Wednesday, you were there. There was more than one person going like, but it's hard. And I was like, yeah, dude, it's hard, you know, like I'm sorry, you know. There's a lot of things we do that are hard, you know. Like kids, that's hard. We go to college, that's hard, you know. Again, getting up in the morning is hard, you know, like a lot of things are hard. Getting a degree is hard, you know, there's a lot of things. So we shouldn't um, resist things just because they're hard, you know. When I was little, I don't know how old I was, probably 7 or 8. I guess I wrote a poem for my mom for Mother's Day. And one of the lines was, love is hard. And I was sort of some kind of emo 3-year old. So, um, so there's this sort of honesty aspect, right? Of like being, okay, where am I really? And it's not like we have to be careful not to approach any aspect of this path with a mind of like self-punishment, you know. Well, you didn't practice yesterday, so today you're going to practice for 2 hours, you know, like it's not helpful, it's not skillful to do that. Okay. um and there's nowhere in the teachings anywhere that says that we should do that. Okay. So um finding our limitations is a trial and error thing, and we're going to have to see for ourselves how to notice that, you know. I was talking about this recently, you know, when I first started on this path, and because compassion is such a big aspect of it, a lot of times we fall into a sense of like martyrdom, right? um and like I can't have any boundaries, and I can't have any limits, and I can't, you know, I just have to let everybody abuse me and all this kind of stuff, right? So it can be hard to find that limit, and you know, in trying to be more compassionate, but at the same time we have to stretch, like Melina was saying too, right? Aspiring to go further. We want to grow, we want to stretch, we don't want to just stay in our little cocoon, you know, and stay kind of just static, right? So, but how far should we go? Okay. um so what I would do would be to just notice like what is happening in my mind, what's happening in my body, you know, um, when I go too far, right? Hey, look at the sea parting for you. Hi, have a seat. Um, no, it's just a jacket. You can take the jacket off or you can leave it there. No problem. No, it's okay. So, say what I wanted to say. So, so we're talking about like self-compassion and this kind of thing. Right. So I was saying, you know, in trying to expand my, you know, compassion and kindness to others, I just started to pay attention, like how I felt in my mind, my body when I would do something, right? And what I noticed, and this is again just me not coming from, you know, the Buddha or the ancient texts covered in gold, you know, it's just Palmo and her dumb experiences. So, I noticed that if I went too far, like if I really, you know, crossed my own boundaries in a way that wasn't good, I would feel kind of nauseous. Like my stomach would just feel like, that was too much, you know. And if I didn't go far enough, that old Catholic guilt would, you know, jump in, and I'd be like, okay, I could have done more, you know. So by doing that, it became easier for me to just check in with myself, and I wouldn't have to eventually, like, I would just have to think about it, you know, before I actually did the action. It'd just be like, how does this make you feel if you do this? Or what if you don't do that? How do you feel? You know? And then I would able to kind of, you know, um, deal with that in a more efficient way. But we do, you know, want to try, we do want to push ourselves to some extent, otherwise we're never going to grow, right? So so there's that. Um and you know, um like one, and I always talk about this story, and I'm sorry if it's, you know, boring for people, but um there's just, it's such a perfect example of the attitude that we're meant to have on this path, which is like small steps, you know, consistent steps, but small, okay, gentle. So, and the story is when in the Buddhist time, there was a king who was, you know, very, very wealthy, and he wanted to be generous, but he just couldn't, right? And he felt bad about that. And so he went to the Buddha and to explain what was happening. And like in our mind, in my mind, when I first heard that story, I was like, oh, the Buddha's going to say, you know, like, that's your problem, man, you know, and like, just go to your store, you know, place and just open the doors and let everybody walk through and take what they want. Okay. That's not what he said. He said, okay, I understand, you know. So here's what I want you to start. Take something that you don't care very much about and pass it from your right hand to your left hand, right? And then give it from your left hand to your right hand. Like, that's where he started. It's crazy how small that is. And then gradually, you know, take something that means more to you and do the same thing. And then, you know, or you know, give the thing that you don't care about to someone that you love a lot, this kind of thing. And then over time, you know, that becomes a habit, and, you know, that then you can open up your stores and let everybody walk through, right? And like even Shantideva in this text, the way the Bodhisattva, he talks about that, you know, by getting used to small things, we can handle big things. And he talks about not going beyond your limitations, otherwise you'll break and there's nothing left, right? So I think that, you know, this habit that we have of um, being I can't think of the word, but like just being hard on ourselves. Yeah, it's a habit like any other habit. Okay. So it's something that's like not going to go away just because you heard about it here or you read it in a book or something. It's not just like the next day it's gone, but it's just like anything else. You just work gradually with that, and then just realize like, okay, you know, this is actually not helpful. And like, I know I'm doing my best, you know, and like, um, and that's okay. And I'm just going to keep going. Yeah. So that's how we do it. And we think like, I'm an ignorant sentient being just like everyone else, you know. So like, I'm just a person on the path. I remember when we were in France, pardon me, for my second 3-year retreat, and there's like 3 different centers where they used to hold a 3-year retreat. And one of them just needed a lot of work. Like they needed like new roofs. They had all these like tiny little sort of cabins, like individual places, but super small. And so they needed work. So we were there working. And there were certain things that we couldn't do, you know, like electric work and things like that. So there was an electrician. I still remember this guy, this big beard. And, you know, we were working there for a long time. People have known each other for a long time. People have tempers, all this kind of stuff, right? So he comes up to me and he goes, um, aren't you guys Buddhist? You know? He said, aren't you guys Buddhist? And I said, yeah, why? You know, and he's like, well, you know, I just see these people fighting and yelling and, you know. And I said, yeah, of course. I was like, we're just human beings, you know, we're just humans. Like, just because we decide to follow this path doesn't mean we're at the end immediately. By the way, have you seen Christians? No. Sorry. Right. So we're just decided to follow this path because we like this path and we think that it's a good one. And, we think it's worth our time and energy. So we're following it. Doesn't mean, oh, just because, the day I take refuge, I don't have anger anymore, you know? And a lot of people do that to Buddhists. They don't do it to any other faith group, but Buddhists right away, you're supposed to just be chill all the time. And, okay. So, um, yeah, so we have to recognize like we're also humans. And sometimes we don't see that we're trying our best because we have this goal, right? I should be like this with not even a goal, expectations. Yeah, I should be like this. I should always be calm. I should always practice 2 hours a day. I should always da da da, right? And then we don't do it, and then we blame ourselves. Oh, I can't believe. Just like you were saying, oh no, I'm the worst. Try like making mistakes when you've been a nun for 30 years. uh, and are teaching, and done all those 7 years of retreat, you know. But then later, like this, again, it's just from my own experience, and then later, like, I don't know, like we get a good night's sleep or, you know, we feel better for whatever reason or medication kicks in. I don't know, and then we just are like, oh, this is really easy. Today it's really easy to do whatever XYZ. And then we're like, no, I was actually doing my best. That was my best. Just because it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, or I was expecting myself to be, doesn't mean it wasn't my best. Okay. So these are some ways that we can handle this issue. And it can be an ongoing issue, but it's worth working on, for our own happiness, honestly, and for the happiness of others. Okay. Because if we stop practicing because it's just an all around negative experience, then, you know, then we're going to stop practicing. We're not going to be good to ourselves or to others. Right. So this is how we have to kind of, work with this particular issue. And we can experiment with that too. Like I remember when I was in my solitary retreat in France, and and there was somebody who was sponsoring me for that retreat, was paying for everything on it. So I felt like so guilty and just like, oh my God, I have to do really well, And there were some days when I just, for whatever reason, couldn't, felt like I couldn't do my session, you know. And those days I would take a walk and it was so pretty there. And I would just take a little walk, and come back. And then I'd berate myself, oh, I can't believe you did that instead of practicing. This person's paying for everything. And you're just taking advantage. You're a terrible person. Blah, 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 blah. And then the next day I wouldn't be able to practice, And I was like, oh, and this is, again, like I'm putting some shade on Christians today, but I respect real Christians. But yeah, so the next habits, or like soon after that, I was eating lunch, and the thought popped in my head that the Buddha didn't die on a cross. You know, Buddha died like that, just laying down. And I'm like, sometimes the easy way is the best way, right? If you have a fence that you can see the end of it, what's going to be the best way to get to the other side of the fence? It's just walking around, right? But our culture is like, no, you lazy pig, like you should dig under it with your bare hands. Like, why? Yeah, it's like, why? That doesn't make sense. So sometimes the easier way is the best way. The more gentle way is the best way. The kinder way is the best way, And so I was like, okay, so next time that I take a walk, instead of doing my practice, I'm going to just say, well, I guess that's what I needed to do. And it's okay. It's not like I was out murdering people, I just took a walk, right? What? What do you say? That took a turn. So, uh, so, uh, uh, so I did that. So the next time I went for a walk, instead of, doing my session and I did that, I was like, okay, well, I guess you just needed the walk. It's no big deal. The next day, so easy to practice again, you know? And this was just like an experiment that I did on myself, right? And to see what would happen. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about, by the way, when we talk about like contemplation, right? So hearing the teachings or studying, contemplating, and meditation, this is the kind of thing, right? Where we see, does this work? Da, da, da. So that's when I really, realized that it was the more skillful way. It really is. And we just have to keep trying that way to see for ourselves that that is true. Yeah. Okay. So let's do some meditation. Meditate. Come on. All right. So we're going to start with mindfulness breathing practice, and then we'll move into the practice of exchange. Okay. All right. So everybody here is sitting in a chair. So you want your feet flat on the floor if you can, flat on the floor in front of you. If you're at home sitting on a bed or the floor or what have you, just cross your legs in whatever way is comfortable. Then there's three different ways that you can um, have your hands. So like just palms down on your knees, or palms one on top of the other like that in your lap, or with your fingers on top of each other and your thumbs touching like that, which is kind of the most formal way. The back should be straight but relaxed. So not like you're in the army, okay? Just straight but relaxed. Back of the neck is also straight, so the chin's going to be tucked in a little bit. Arms are relaxed, just by your side. Your shoulders should be back a little bit. So normally I just roll my shoulders back one time and it kind of opens up the chest. Mouth is closed but relaxed, tongue resting on the roof of the mouth, breathing through the nose. Ideally, the eyes are open, sort of half open, looking down with relaxed, lowered gaze. If that's too uncomfortable for you, just go ahead and close your eyes, but it is recommended to keep them open. So you might want to practice that over time. Okay, so that's the posture. And we have this posture because it supports the mind in meditation. All right. So, what we're going to do for mindfulness or breathing practice is to bring our awareness to the sensation of the breath coming in and out of the nose. So, take a moment to just notice that sensation. Okay. So, the aim is to maintain continuous, relaxed awareness of that sensation and letting the thoughts just come and go as they will. Okay. So, not following after them. If we follow after them, then we'll get distracted. So, as soon as we realize we got distracted, simply bring the mind back to the breath. Okay. So, just please begin that now. Now, please begin to count the breaths, counting either every in breath or every out breath for a total of 10 completed breaths. Counting will help us to realize more quickly if we've gotten distracted because we will have lost count. So if you lose count, as soon as you realize you got distracted, just bring the mind back and start again at 1. If you get to 10 without being distracted, don't let that fact distract you. Go back to 1, start again. The attitude is really important. We were just talking about being gentle. Noticing that we got distracted is not an invitation for self-criticism. It's actually an opportunity to rejoice, because that's exactly what this practice is about. Knowing the mind when it's distracted and bringing it back to awareness. That's the whole deal. So if we realize we got distracted, it's a major victory. So, oh, cool, I realized I got distracted. Okay, come back to the breath and to counting. So please begin that now. Okay, now we move into the practice of exchange. So, first thing we want to do is just rest the mind. So, rather than trying to focus on the breath, we just let the mind settle into its natural state without being distracted. Just do that for a moment. I'll ring this bell, just ring, listen to the sound as long as you can hear it, and then let the mind rest. So, for this practice, if you want to close your eyes, that's fine. If not, that's also fine. So, we begin with visualization. So, the first thing is to picture in your heart center, so that's the middle of your chest, a very bright white light like a shining star. And then imagine that you're breathing in a gray smoke, hot, dark, and heavy through all the pores of your body. And all of that smoke dissolves into the white light in your heart center. Until there's not a single particle of smoke left, there's only light. And we breathe out white light, cool, clean, clear, very bright, through all the pores of our body, light going in all directions. Now, imagine yourself in front of yourself, so facing you. The you that you are visualizing is the part of yourself that is confused, in pain, suffering in whatever ways you know better than anyone. And the you that is meditating is the part of yourself that is in touch with your basic goodness, your wisdom and compassion, or your Buddha nature. So the first thing here is to regard yourself without embarrassment and bring to mind your many good qualities, just like you notice the good qualities of your friends and loved ones, whatever that may be, a sense of humor, intelligence, kindness, whatever talents and capabilities you have. How you try your best to be a good person, to fulfill the various roles you may have in life. And of course, in that process, some perceived faults may come to mind, and that's okay. Just like we forgive the faults of our friends and loved ones, we look past them and love them anyway. We would need to do that for ourselves. And then bring to mind whatever ways you are suffering. As I said, you know better than anyone, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, various situations in your life, just bring those things to mind. And then generate compassion for yourself. Wish that you be happy, wish that you be free from suffering, just like you have compassion for others and don't want them to suffer. Now imagine that all of your sufferings takes the form of gray smoke, hot in temperature, dark and heavy. And this gray smoke leaves the visualized you and it comes to the meditating you. And the meditating you, with a great deal of love and compassion, and without any hesitation, breathes in that gray smoke through all the pores of your body. And all of that smoke dissolves into the white light in your heart center. Till there's not a single particle of smoke left. There's only light. And then you offer yourself every happiness, anything at all that you may need to feel better, to solve whatever issues you may have. And adding to that the wish that you attain full and complete enlightenment in this very lifetime. And all of that takes the form of white light, cool, clear, very, very bright light and weight. And you breathe out this white light through all the pores of your body. And the light moves from the meditating you to the visualized you. And when these rays of light touch the visualized you see all your suffering just disappear. You feel so relieved and finally peaceful. And meditating you feels really joyful for being able to do this for yourself. Now we go through that same process for all sentient beings without exception, beginning by visualizing them all around us. In front, as many beings as we can conceive of, stretching all the way to the horizon. To the right, again, as many beings as we can imagine, all the way to the horizon. Behind, countless beings, all the way to the horizon. And same thing to the left, all the way to the horizon. And now you're in the middle of a sea of sentient beings. And the first thing we want to consider is that we're the same, and that each and every being wants to be happy and wants to avoid suffering and suffers nonetheless. And the Buddha taught that each and every being has at one point been our kind and loving mother. Well, we could think of that if that's not something that we can relate to, that's fine. I just think we're the same in that way, and that there's so many beings who support our day-to-day life, to whom we are connected, seen and unseen. And that all these beings are suffering physically, mentally, emotionally, in various ways. So we consider that all their suffering, whatever it is, takes this form of gray smoke, hot, dark, and heavy. It leaves them and it comes to you, and with so much openness and courage and love and compassion, you breathe that in through all the pores of your body. Then all of that smoke dissolves into a white light in your heart center, until there's not a single particle of smoke left. There's only light. And you offer your own happiness, consider you're giving it away, your good fortune, anything at all that they may need to feel better, and adding to that the wish that each and every being attains full enlightenment in this very lifetime. And all of that takes the form of white light, cool, clean, clear, very bright, light in weight, powerful. You breathe out this light through every pore of your body in all directions as far as the eye can see. And when these rays of light touch each individual, their suffering just lifts off of them and disappears like fog in the morning sun. And they feel so happy, so relieved and peaceful. And you feel really joyful for being able to do this for them. And bring your mind back to the breath, using the breath to bring and keep the mind in the present moment, here and now. Okay, so now we're going to do the closing prayers. I will share them with you on YouTube, but please know that you can download them by clicking the link below. You can also sign up for our newsletter and a bunch of other stuff. So we begin with the long life prayers, starting with the Dalai Lama, and then below that, Jigme Rinpoche and the ones on the right. These we just do in Tibetan, so just do your best. Ganri wawe kowe shinkan su pendan dewa malu juene chenre siwon tenzeng yang soyi shape ge gaba tu tengye shi om swasti jigme kempe kalo yang paru kunkap se chen su se bundawa Nidra dunsanam ke no bucho se che yawe shakinta su so om swasti tsela kyam searchin up tunjule nunsin jakse gyutu pema wang sangsum nadre yapo jajene labchen tender shetan tage sho Lama Gungam Sampo Soadep Chotuku Seving Was Soadep Trine Tashin Gepa Soadep Lama Dandre Wa Me Pa Lo. Now the next page, this first prayer, we say once in English and once in Tibetan, remaining three just in English, and then we say the 100-syllable mantra. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. Sonam di tamche sipani, tobne ye pedranam pamche shing, kegana chi balon trupai, Sipe sole joa joa sho. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be. And where it has arisen, may it never fail, but grow and flourish ever more and more. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world, ever absorbed in a display of divine forms and primordial awareness, appearance, sound, and perception in the state of divinities, mantras, and dharmakaya. May I, inseparable from the practice of the profound and secret great yoga, attain within the essence of mind the state of one taste. Om Vajra Tattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Jinopa Tishta Drido Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Sukokayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarvasiddhi Me Prayasa Karma Sutsa Me Chitam Shriya Kuruhum ha 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 ho Bhagavan Savatata Gata Vajramame Munsa Patriva Mahasamaya Sadva. Okay, so before we go, I have a couple of announcements to make. If you haven't signed up for the newsletter, please do so. That's the best way to know what's happening for us. And on this Tuesday, the 11th, it's one of 4 days in the Buddhist calendar where the effects of our actions are multiplied many millions of times. So we'll be doing the Buddha sadhana that evening at 7 o'clock. We'll go like 7 to 8, or 7 to probably 7:45. And then next week, every Saturday we have meditation online. The second Saturday of every month, we have it here at the library. We have Thanksgiving week. We do have the Buddha Day at 7:30 on Friday, but there won't be any meditation on Saturday. Okay. The other thing is that we're going to have a 2-day retreat online, unless somebody has a place where we can host it. But this is just to raise money for the food bank. So 100% of the money that we take in will go to the food bank. Okay. So we don't have anything about that on the site just yet, but that will be out soon this week. And I wanted to say that in the newsletter, I made a mistake with the numbers. So in the newsletter, it says 23rd and 24th, but it's Saturday and Sunday. So it's 22nd and 23rd of November. If you're able to make any donations, we very, very much appreciate it and really need it. So if you're able to do that, that would be really awesome. Okay, thank you. Somebody said that exchange thing was fantastic. We'll be coming back to this video. Good. So we have a ton of videos also with the other subjects and other practices, like the various ways to do the practice of exchange. Check out the links in the description box below. Like and subscribe. Please, it does help us. I know it sounds kind of dumb, but it really does help to drive traffic. So, and if you could subscribe and like, and if you have any comments to make in the comments section, that helps as well. You're welcome, everyone. And that's it. Let's go. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. So nice to see you. All right, bye, YouTubers.